Fear is a prejudice that arises from the nerves, and it trembles because it does not know the law. Fyodor Dostoevsky. Imagine the scene. You are in your room, late at night. The world outside is silent, but inside you, there is a deafening noise, a restlessness that has no name but has weight. You pick up your phone, open a social network, and scroll through the feed without seeing anything. You turn on the TV, but you don't hear what is said. You get up to drink water, but you are not thirsty. There is a subtle emptiness, a feeling that something is fundamentally wrong, but you don't know what. It is the anguish of an unlived life, the melancholy of a sleeping potential. Now, imagine waking up tomorrow morning. The alarm goes off, you get up, have your coffee, prepare for another day. The routine unfolds with almost mechanical precision. You go to work, you complete your tasks, you interact with people, you smile at the right moments, you present yourself as competent, reliable. You follow the script that was handed to you. But, for an instant, while driving or sitting on public transport, a silent question cuts through your mind like a needle. Is this it? This question does not come from logic. It comes from a much deeper place. A place that modern society has taught us to ignore, to numb with productivity, entertainment, and infinite distractions. It is the voice of your soul asking why you stopped trying, why you accepted living a life that seems safe, but deep down feels like a comfortable prison. We have become masters at justifying our inertia. We call the refusal to risk responsibility. We call the abandonment of our most authentic dreams maturity. We call the acceptance of a life that doesn't fulfill us realism. But what if all of this is just a sophisticated narrative to hide the simplest and most terrifying truth of all? What if, behind all your prudence, all your logic, all your impeccably built routine, there is only one force governing everything? Fear. Not the obvious fear of a physical threat like a wild animal or a robbery. That is a primitive and useful fear. I'm talking about a much more subtle, invisible, and powerful fear. A fear that disguises itself as common sense. The fear of being judged if you try something new and fail. The fear of being abandoned if you show who you really are, with all your frailties and strange desires. The fear of the unknown that keeps you trapped in a predictable present, even if it is painful. The fear of the chaos that your own freedom could cause. This fear does not scream, it whispers. It does not paralyze you with a fright. It seduces you with the promise of safety. It is the silent architect of your comfort zone. It dictates the course you do not take, the word you do not say, the love you do not live, the talent you bury. It is the invisible jailer who convinces you that the cell is, in fact, a refuge. Think about the last 5 years of your life. How many decisions were made not out of a burning desire for expansion, but out of a cowardly whisper to avoid discomfort? That job you didn't quit, that relationship you didn't end, that trip you didn't take, that project that never left the drawing board. Each of these inactions was a small prayer to a God you didn't even know you were worshiping, the God of security. The cruelest paradox is that this incessant search for security generates the greatest insecurity of all, that of reaching the end of your life and realizing that you never truly lived, that you were a competent actor in a play you did not choose. The great question, therefore, is not whether you are afraid. We all are. The question is, to what extent has fear become your invisible master? To what extent has it ceased to be a protective instinct to become the very architecture of your reality, a golden cage that you yourself helped build, piece by piece, day after day? What happens when we realize that the hand holding the key to our own prison is our own? This prison without bars that you feel is not your failure. It is an ancient mechanism, a psychological inheritance that pulses in the veins of the human condition. To understand it, we cannot stay on the surface. In the lists of 5 steps to conquer fear, we need to go down into the basement of the psyche, where the true gears of our behavior operate in the shadows. It is here that we find the monumental work of Carl Jung, who gave us a map to this dark territory. Jung would say that what we call invisible fear is in large part the manifestation of our own shadow. The shadow is the repository of everything we have repressed in ourselves to be accepted, loved, and to feel safe. Since childhood, we learn a brutal lesson. Certain parts of us are welcome, others are not. Our spontaneity, our anger, our vulnerability, our rawest desires, our chaotic creativity, all of this, when it doesn't fit the mold of family, school, or society, is pushed into the dark. The result? We create a persona, a socially acceptable mask that we present to the world. And we spend so much time wearing this mask that we forget it is a mask. We confuse our character with who we really are. Fear, then, is born from this internal fracture. The fear of being judged is, in fact, the dread that someone will see the parts of you that you yourself learned to reject. It is your own shadow, projected onto the gaze of the other. The fear of failing is not just about the mistake itself, but about the shame of not living up to the image of competence that your persona strives so hard to maintain. Every time you avoid a risk, it is not your soul that is in command. It is your persona, terrified of the possibility of being unmasked. The trigger phrase here is devastatingly simple. What you have repressed wants to show you who you are. This dynamic is amplified by modern society. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche already warned about the herd man, the one who sacrifices his individuality in exchange for the warmth and protection of the group. Today, that herd has found its most fertile pasture in the digital world. The persona that Jung described is no longer just a mask for work or social events. It has become a full-time project, a curated performance broadcast 24/7. Every post, every photo, every update is an attempt to sculpt an acceptable version of ourselves, on a stage where the audience is invisible, but judgment is constant. The fear of loneliness has transformed into the fear of digital irrelevance, and the search for validation has become a relentless hunt for likes that never quench the soul's hunger for true acceptance. Society offers us a tempting contract. Complete the checklist, study, work, consume, perform happiness, and in return, you will receive the illusion of security. The price of this contract, however, is your own vitality. It is a slow death disguised as stability. It is here that the metaphor of the guardian becomes clear. Think of fear as a guardian that was once useful. It protected you from rejection, from abandonment, from pain. But it never left. It remained at the gate of your soul, and over time, the gate shrank. Today, this guardian does not look like a monster. It has your voice. It uses your logic. It whispers with the voice of common sense. It's for your own good. It holds a record of all your past failures and shows it to you whenever you dare to dream. Remember the last time you tried that? Remember the humiliation? Its protection service no longer guards you from real dangers. It protects you from life itself, from the possibility of feeling fully. It prevents you from accessing the richest, deepest, and truest parts of yourself. The fear of feeling pain prevents you from feeling deep love. The fear of looking foolish prevents you from being genuinely creative. The fear of chaos prevents you from finding a new order, an order that is truly yours. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote that the last of the human freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. The invisible fear operates exactly in this space. It convinces us that we do not have this choice. It colonizes our imagination, limiting what we consider possible. It is the force that whispers, "It's not worth it. It's too risky. What will others think?" So, the hidden problem is not a personal weakness. It is an existential condition, a deep psychological mechanism fueled by a social structure that profits from our conformity. You are not a coward. You are a human being who has been taught, in very subtle and effective ways, to fear your own light. Recognizing this is not a step towards guilt, but the first step towards liberation. It is lighting a small candle in the dark basement of the psyche and, for the first time, seeing the face of your jailer. And realizing, with a chill, that he looks a lot like you. If this reflection is touching something in you, consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video to support the channel. There are others like it waiting for you. The guardian who lives at the gate of your soul is not a loud tyrant. His tyranny is silent, methodical, and seeps into every crevice of your existence. He no longer needs to shout orders. He simply redecorates your cell every day until you believe it is the entire world. The consequences of this invisible reign are not dramatic, isolated events. They are the very fabric of your daily reality, a spider's web woven with the threads of your inaction. On a neurological level, this constant fear carves deep valleys in the brain. Every time you yield to the guardian's whisper and choose the safe path, silence instead of opinion, routine instead of adventure, you strengthen a neural pathway. The brain, in its relentless search for efficiency, learns that avoidance is the default response to discomfort. Your comfort zone ceases to be a choice and becomes a conditioned reflex. This is why change seems so difficult, almost physically impossible. It's not a lack of willpower. It's that you are trying to run against a river of electrical impulses that you yourself, unconsciously, helped to dig for years. Your freedom becomes a foreign territory. This conditioning is exploited by what psychologists call the negativity bias. Our mind evolved to be like Velcro for negative experiences and like Teflon for positive ones. The guardian exploits this flaw in our system with mastery. It amplifies the memory of a single failure, a single judgment, and turns it into definitive proof that risk is not worth it, while the dozens of moments when courage could have generated joy are dismissed as dangerous anomalies. The most devastating emotional consequence is the corrosion of joy. You don't feel openly unhappy, you simply feel less. Life loses its color, its flavor. It is the subtle anhedonia of one who lives protected from everything, including their own vitality. It's that feeling of watching your own life from behind a thick glass. You go to parties, but you're not really there. You achieve goals, but the satisfaction lasts only an instant. You are surrounded by people, but a deep loneliness accompanies you, because no one knows the real you that is locked in the basement, while your persona socializes politely in the living room. It's the moment when you're in a meeting and you have a brilliant idea, but you feel it die in your throat because the guardian's voice whispers, "What if nobody likes it? It's better to stay quiet." Or when you look at the art course you always dreamed of taking, but the same voice says, "That doesn't make money. Be realistic." Each of these small deaths is a silent mourning for the life you could be living. If you've ever been through this, feel free to share. Now multiply this small silent death by millions. The result is not just a collection of diminished lives. The result is our culture. A society composed of individuals governed by fear becomes a culture of conformity, which celebrates safety as the highest virtue and sees radical authenticity as recklessness. To not feel the pain of our unrealized potential, we numb ourselves. It is the collective anesthesia. We buy what we don't need. We binge-watch series to silence the internal noise. We scroll through infinite feeds to avoid encountering the void. We have created a cruel paradox. In an era of hyperconnectivity, we experience an epidemic of loneliness. Because our connections are, for the most part, between personas, not between souls. They are alliances between representatives, while the true citizens, our fears, our hopes, our shadows, remain isolated. The final and most terrifying consequence is normalization. Gradually, you get used to the cell. You forget the smell of the open air. You stop questioning. The subtle anguish of youth transforms into the silent resignation of middle age. The question, "Is this it?" stops appearing, not because you found the answer, but because you became afraid to even ask. This is the real power of invisible fear. It doesn't destroy you with one blow. It dismantles you, piece by piece, so slowly that you barely notice you're disappearing. And now, feeling the weight of this cage, the urgency sets in. Not as panic, but as a cold, cutting clarity. How do you free yourself from a jailer who lives inside you? How do you start a rebellion against a regime you helped to elect? The questions that echo in the silence of your soul. How to break free? How to start a rebellion? Expect a grandiose answer, a battle plan, a strategy of attack. The mind, trained in the logic of war, seeks a weapon to destroy the enemy. But the physics of the soul obeys a different law than that of the material world. Here, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. To fight fear is to engage in an internal civil war, where your every attack strengthens it. The guardian feeds on your resistance. The true rebellion, therefore, is an act that defies the logic of conflict. It does not begin with a fight, but with a surrender. It is to stop pushing the door and realize that it opens inward. It is the act of starting to listen. Fear is a messenger speaking a language you have unlearned. The language of your own soul, a language before words, made of sensations, symbols, and bodily memories. The rebellion is the process of becoming literate in yourself again. Fear is not an enemy. It is an ancient text, written in a code that points to an original wound. As Jung said, the gold is in the darkness. Your pain is your teacher, and fear is the map that leads exactly to the point where the treasure of your authenticity was buried. This process of deciphering unfolds in 3 silent and profound movements. The first movement is learning to listen to the forgotten language. This is the dialogue with the shadow. At first, it is uncomfortable. It is like entering a dark room and waiting for your eyes to adjust. Instead of distracting yourself from the anxiety that arises, you invite it to sit with you. You allow it to vibrate in your chest, in your hands, and you ask with the curiosity of an archaeologist uncovering a tomb. What is your story? From what ancient pain were you born? What are you so afraid will happen again? Perhaps the answer does not come in words, but in an image, a childhood memory, a feeling of abandonment. You are not looking for a solution. You are looking for the origin. By doing this, you stop treating fear like a faulty fire alarm and start seeing it as the cry of a part of you that was frozen in time. And you, as the adult you are today, can offer it what no one offered in the past: presence and validation. The second movement is learning to respond in this new language. The soul is not convinced by promises, but by evidence. It responds to acts. This is the minimal, deliberate action. Modern culture praises massive action, quantum leaps, but this only scares the guardian and makes it build higher walls. The wisdom of the soul lies in the micro movement. If you are afraid of being judged, your response is not a speech, but the act of holding eye contact with someone for 1 second longer. If you fear intimacy, it is not proposing marriage, but sharing a small vulnerability with someone you trust. If you fear creative failure, it is not painting the masterpiece, but cleaning the brushes and mixing a color. Each of these acts, no matter how small, is a letter in the new alphabet of your existence. It is neurological evidence, a small pulse of dopamine that tells your brain, "See, we survived. More than that, we feel a little more alive." You are literally rewriting your past with a new future. The third movement is the realization that you are the translator, not the message. This is the disidentification from the persona. It is the development of an observing consciousness. Fear will come. The voice that says don't do it will scream. But with practice, you learn to step back and observe this mechanism. Ah, here it is. The fear pattern. My persona's reaction. You see it as a weather phenomenon passing through the sky of your consciousness, instead of identifying with the storm. As Montaigne said, one must cultivate a backshop all our own. This is your translation sanctuary, your silent command center. By creating a space between the impulse of fear and your response, you cease to be the slave of the message and become the sage who interprets it. In this millimeter of a pause, all your freedom resides. This journey of deciphering leads to the most powerful revelation. Freedom is not the absence of fear. It is fluency in the language of your soul, to the point where fear is just one word, and not the entire dictionary. The guardian does not disappear, as no part of you should be annihilated. He is integrated. From a jailer, he transforms into an old librarian, an advisor who shows you the maps of ancient dangers, but whose route you are no longer obliged to follow. The power of decision returns to you. It is a homecoming, a pacification of your internal civil war. You become whole. If you wish to support this channel and access exclusive content that delves even deeper into these tools for liberation, become a member for less than 8 Rs a month. The link is in the description. The rebellion is not a single event. It is the daily practice of choosing the soul's translation over the noise of security. And with this new internal alliance, you stop trying to escape your life and finally begin to live it. And with this new internal alliance, you stop trying to escape your life and finally begin to live it. And what is this life like, finally lived? The mind, accustomed to the drama of war, expects an apotheosis, an explosion of light, constant happiness, a parade of victories. The truth, as always, is quieter, more subtle, and infinitely more profound. The lived life is not a life without fear. It is a life where fear no longer occupies the throne. At first, the most notable change is the quality of the silence. The background noise, that low-frequency chronic anxiety that you no longer even noticed existed, diminishes. There is more space between your thoughts. The world has not changed. The challenges, the uncertainties, the pains of others still exist, but your center of gravity has shifted. You are no longer a leaf in the wind of circumstances, but a tree that feels the wind, that even bends with it, but whose roots are firm in a place of stillness. The desperate search for external validation quiets down, replaced by a serene self-approval. But here lies the danger of a new trap. The belief that you have arrived, that the rebellion has been won, and the war is over. It is at this point that the final truth, the most powerful realization, must emerge for the transformation to be permanent. And the truth is this: the war was never about you against fear. Fear was not the jailer of your soul. It was the bodyguard of your ego. The entire protective structure, the entire architecture of your prison, was not built to protect your life, but to protect your identity. That constructed I, the persona, the heap of labels, beliefs, memories, and social roles that you learn to call yourself. It is this fragile, fabricated identity, the ego, that has a mortal fear of failing, of being judged, of being rejected, of not being enough. Because the ego is made of this, of comparisons, of approvals, of control. Real life, with its chaos, its impermanence, its pain, and its unpredictable beauty, is an existential threat to the fixed identity of the ego. Your rebellion, your dialogue with the shadow, your small acts of courage, were not to free yourself. They were to weaken the control of this artificial identity over your consciousness. The great liberation is not getting rid of fear. It is disidentifying from the I that is so afraid. It is the perception, which arrives not as a thought but as a bodily experience, that you are not your name, your profession, your achievements, or your wounds. You are the consciousness that witnesses all of it. You are the sky, and the ego, with its fears and dramas, is just a passing cloud. When this perception deepens, the world reconfigures. The purpose of life ceases to be a treasure hunt for an external goal, success, recognition, happiness. The purpose becomes a quality of presence. It becomes the expression of your essence in every act, no matter how mundane. Washing the dishes with total presence can be an act more connected to purpose than receiving an award in a distracted and anxious way. Pain also changes its meaning. It ceases to be a sign that something is wrong and comes to be seen as part of the texture of existence. Like the contraction that precedes birth, like the cold that makes us value warmth, it is what Nietzsche would call amor fati, the love of one's fate. Not a passive resignation, but a resounding yes to everything life presents, both pleasure and pain, understanding that both are necessary for fullness. And your relationships transform. The need to impress, to protect yourself, to play games, dissolves. The masks fall, not because you force them, but because they become too heavy and unnecessary. The interaction ceases to be a transaction between two egos and becomes an encounter between two presences, a space of vulnerability and truth where real connection can finally flourish. Think of that scene from the beginning. The silent room, late at night, the same quietness, but now you are no longer trying to fill it with noise. You breathe it in. The silence is no longer the evidence of your loneliness, but the sound of your own company. The question, "Is this it?" has dissolved. In its place, a calm perception, a whisper that comes from the depths of your being. This is all of it, and it is enough. There are other reflections like this waiting for you on our channel. Watch the next video on the screen to continue your journey. The final freedom is the serene acceptance that you were never really trapped. You were only dreaming you were the prisoner, when, all along, you were the cell itself, the bars, the key, and the sky outside.